It was a quiet afternoon when everything I thought I knew about my life came crashing down. My name is David, and for 10 years, I believed I was in a stable, happy marriage with my wife, Chloe. We didn't have kids, but we had a life filled with shared dreams, vacations, and long evenings spent talking about everything and nothing. At least, that's what I thought. That day, I decided to leave work early. I didn't do it often, but I wanted to surprise Chloe with her favorite flowers and invite her for coffee at her favorite spot in downtown Seattle. Lately, she had been distant, citing work overload and a need to be alone to clear her head. I chalked it up to stress her job as an interior designer could be demanding. Parking near the café, I saw her through the large window. Chloe was sitting at a corner table, facing a man I didn't know. They were sitting close, talking quietly about something, and she was laughing in a way she hadn't laughed with me in years. Her hand was resting on his, and there was a familiarity between them that made my stomach clench. For a moment, I convinced myself it was innocent. Maybe he was a client or an old friend. But deep down, something clicked. I grabbed the flowers and walked inside, my heart pounding like a drum. As I approached their table, they didn't notice me at first. I stood there, frozen, until Chloe finally looked up. Her smile vanished the instant our eyes met. The man, tall, well-dressed, and exuding confidence, turned to me with an unreadable expression. "David," Chloe stammered, pulling her hand away from his, as if the distance between them could erase what I had just seen. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out a small scrap of paper on which I had just scribbled something in the car, and placed it in front of her. The note read, "Don't come home." She stared at it, her face turning pale as if she'd been slapped. The man glanced at the note, then at me, and leaned back in his chair with an annoyingly calm demeanor, as if this were just an ordinary day for him. "David, let me explain," Chloe began, but I didn't give her a chance. I turned around and walked out, leaving the flowers on the table. I heard her calling my name, but I didn't stop. When I got to the car, I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, cry, hit something, but I just sat there, stunned. The woman I had trusted with my life was sitting in a café with another man, holding his hand, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. But the worst was yet to come. That night, Chloe came home anyway, despite my note. And what she did next made me question everything we had built together. Chloe walked into the house that evening as if nothing had happened. She didn't have the note with her. She didn't look upset or guilty. Instead, she was composed, as if she had spent hours rehearsing what she was about to say. I was sitting on the sofa in the living room, staring at the blank TV. My mind was feverishly replaying every detail of what I had seen in the cafe. How she laughed, how she touched his hand. It was like I was looking at a stranger who just happened to look like my wife. "David," she said, dropping her purse on a chair by the door. "We need to talk." I didn't move. I didn't even look at her. "You think?" She sighed, moving closer and sitting on the edge of the sofa. Her brazen calm was infuriating. "This isn't what you think," she began, her tone too measured, as if she were soothing a child. "Really?" I finally said, turning to her. "Because I think my wife was on a date with another man this afternoon, holding his hand and laughing in a way she hasn't with me for years. So, if it's not that, enlighten me, Chloe." She flinched at my tone, but didn't back down. "He's just a friend. We were talking about work, that's all." I laughed bitterly, stood up, and started pacing the room. "A friend? You don't hold a friend's hand like that, Chloe. You don't look at a friend as if they hung the moon. You don't act like you're falling in love with them in the middle of a cafe where your husband could walk in at any moment." Her calm mask cracked for a second, and I saw it guilt, fear. But just as quickly, she covered it with indignation. "You're exaggerating, David. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Nothing happened." "Don't lie to me," I shouted, and my voice echoed through the room. "I saw you, Chloe. I saw it all. Don't stand there and insult my intelligence." She crossed her arms, clenching her jaw. "Fine. You want the truth?" "Yes, I'm seeing him. But it's not what you think. It's not serious. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, sarcasm dripping from my voice. "What's so complicated about cheating on your husband?" "I didn't cheat on you," she shot back. "Physically, no. We've been talking, yes, but it's just an emotional connection. I've been unhappy, David, for a long time. And he listens to me. He understands me in a way you don't anymore." Her words hit me like a freight train. "So it's my fault?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You're saying this happened because I failed you?" She didn't answer, but her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I shook my head, my heart shattering into a million pieces. "You could have talked to me, Chloe. You could have said you were unhappy. But instead, you went behind my back and found someone else to listen to you." She stood up, arms still crossed. "I didn't plan for this to happen, David. It just did. And to be honest, I'm not even sure I want to fix it now." Those words were like a dagger to my heart. "Then why are you here? Why did you come back?" She hesitated and then said something that made my blood run cold. "Because I wasn't ready to leave yet. I wanted to talk to you first, to see if we could work something out. But now..." I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger, heartache, and disbelief. "Get out," I gritted through my teeth. "David, please. No." "You made your choice, Chloe. Now I'm making mine. Pack your things and get out. I can't do this anymore." For a moment I thought she would argue, but she didn't. Instead, she nodded, turned, and went upstairs to pack. As I listened to the drawers opening and closing, I sat back down on the sofa, numb. My mind raced, thinking about what she had done, who this man was, and how long it had been going on. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. What she did next took this betrayal to a level I couldn't have imagined. Chloe didn't take long to pack. She came downstairs with one suitcase, her face unreadable. For a second, it seemed like she wanted to say something, but I wasn't in the mood to hear any more excuses or lies. "Where are you going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know why I even cared. Maybe out of a sense of duty left over from 10 years of marriage. "To a friend's," she replied shortly, avoiding eye contact. "To his?" I asked pointedly. She froze, her grip on the suitcase handle tightening. That pause told me everything I needed to know. "You know what? Don't answer," I said, waving a hand. "Just go." Without another word, she walked out the door, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt too big and empty. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the spot where she had just been standing, reliving every moment of the last few months, the late nights, the sudden work trips, the constant excuses. It all made sense now. But just when I thought the worst was over, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "You did the right thing, David. She's not worth it. Thought you should know what she's been up to. Check your email." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Who was this? And how did they know what was going on? Curiosity got the better of me. I opened my laptop and logged into my email. As promised, there was an email with the subject line, "The truth about Chloe." I hesitated, my finger hovering over the mouse. Did I really want to know? Of course I did. I opened the email, and what I saw made my blood run cold again. There were photos, dozens of them, of Chloe and the man from the café. They weren't just having coffee. They were at a hotel, walking hand in hand, laughing, kissing. The timestamps on the photos went back several months. And then there was a video, a shaky, low-quality clip of them in a hotel room. Chloe's voice was unmistakable. She was laughing and saying, "David will never find out. He's too trusting." I slammed the laptop shut, my chest tight with a mixture of rage and pain. This wasn't just an emotional affair. She had lied to my face, betrayed me, and now someone else was rubbing it in. The worst part was, I had no idea who had sent that email, but I was going to find out. And when I did, I was going to get to the bottom of how deep this betrayal went. That night, I barely slept, my mind spinning with questions I had no answers to. Who sent the email? Why did they do it? And how did they know so much about Chloe's affair? By morning, my exhaustion had turned into determination. I decided to reply to the message from the unknown number. My text was short and to the point. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" A reply came quickly, within minutes. "A friend. Let's just say I know Chloe better than you think. She's not who she pretends to be. If you want the whole story, meet me at the park near your house at 2 p.m. I'll be wearing a black hoodie." I stared at the message, debating whether to go. It felt like a scene from a bad movie, but at the same time, curiosity was eating away at me. If there was more to Chloe's infidelity, I needed to know. By 1:45 p.m., I was sitting in my car, parked near the entrance to the park. My heart was racing, my palms were sweaty. What was I even doing? Meeting a stranger who claimed to know my wife's secrets? It sounded absurd, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this person had the answers I needed. At exactly 2 p.m., I saw a figure in a black hoodie approaching a bench under a large oak tree. Taking a deep breath, I got out of my car and walked toward him. The person, who I could now see was a man in his early 30s, looked up as I approached. His face was partially hidden by the hood, but I could see enough to know I didn't recognize him. "You're David?" he said, his voice low and calm. "Yeah." "And you are?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Call me Dan," he said, gesturing for me to sit. I hesitated, but eventually sat down, keeping some distance between us. "How do you know Chloe?" I asked. He gave a bitter smile. "I used to work with her. We were close for a while. But let's just say, I learned the hard way what she's really like." "What does that mean?" Dan pulled out his phone and handed it to me. "See for yourself." On the screen was a series of messages, a conversation between Chloe and someone saved as Eric. The messages were explicit, detailing their meetings and plans to keep David in the dark. "She's been seeing this Eric guy for almost a year," Dan said. "He's married, by the way. I found out when I caught them together at a company party. She didn't even care that I saw them, just told me to mind my own business." I stared at the messages, feeling a wave of nausea. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" "Because I've been in your shoes," he said, and his voice softened. "I know what it feels like to be made a fool. I thought you deserved to know the truth before she dragged you down even further. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to thank him, but another part wanted to scream. This wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation, planned and executed right under my nose." Handing him back his phone, Dan added, "She won't stop, David. People like Chloe don't change. I learned that the hard way." I left the park feeling more broken than ever. But I also felt something else, an undeniable desire to take control. Chloe thought she could play me for a fool, but she was about to find out how wrong she was. As I drove home from the park, I could barely keep my hand steady on the wheel. Dan's words echoed in my head. "She won't stop." The thought infuriated me, but it also ignited something I hadn't felt in days. Clarity. Chloe had lied, cheated, and humiliated me. For the past 24 hours, I had been in shock and heartache. But now I needed to focus. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. When I got home, I immediately grabbed my laptop and started digging. Dan had mentioned the name Eric, and I soon found him on social media. Eric was everything I wasn't. Polished, charming, and judging by his family photos, a complete fraud. He had a wife, 2 kids, and a big house in the suburbs. The thought of him sitting at my table, stealing my wife, while playing the perfect family man made my blood boil. I took screenshots of his posts, his work profile, and anything else I could find. I didn't have a full plan yet, but I wanted to be prepared. Chloe and Eric thought they were untouchable. I was going to prove them wrong. As I was staring at the screen, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Chloe. "I need to get the rest of my stuff tomorrow. Will you be home?" Her audacity was unbelievable. She had barely been gone, and now she wanted to waltz back in as if nothing major had happened. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I finally replied. "I'll be here." "Come at 5 p.m. The next day, I spent a few hours preparing for her arrival. I printed out the photos and messages Dan had shown me and laid them out neatly on the dining table. I also printed screenshots of Eric's family photos, just to drive the point home. At exactly 5 p.m., Chloe walked in. She was, as always, impeccably dressed, her expression a mix of guilt and irritation. "I'm just here for my things," she said curtly, heading for the stairs. "Not so fast," I said, blocking her path. "We need to talk." She rolled her eyes. "David, we've already talked." "I told you." "No, this time you're going to listen." I cut her off sharply. I pointed to the dining table. "Sit down." Her gaze drifted to the table, and I saw her face pale as she noticed the stack of papers. Slowly, she sat down, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "What is this?" she asked, though I could tell she already knew. "This," I said, spreading the papers out in front of her, "is everything. The messages, the photos, the hotel visits, Eric's life, his wife, his kids. Did you think I was too blind to figure it out? Well, guess what? I know everything now, Chloe." She stared at the evidence, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "David, I can explain." "No!" I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. "You've done enough explaining. Now it's my turn." I took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in my voice. "You lied to me. You cheated on me, and you didn't even have the decency to hide it. You sat there and laughed at me, thinking I would never find out. Well, you know what? I did, and now you're going to face the consequences." Her composure cracked, and for the first time, I saw real panic in her eyes. "What do you mean? What are you going to do?" I leaned in closer, my voice quiet and firm. "I'm not going to hurt you, Chloe, but I'm not going to let you walk away from this unscathed either. You destroyed our marriage, humiliated me, and lied to my face. I hope it was worth it." She didn't answer, her eyes darting between the papers and my face. For the first time, Chloe was at a loss for words. As she gathered the last of her things and walked out of the house for the final time, I watched her go, feeling a strange mix of anger, relief, and emptiness. But I knew this wasn't the end. Chloe and Eric had built their lies on my back. Now it was my turn to tear it all down. The silence in the house after Chloe left was deafening. For the first time in many years, I was truly alone. But instead of wallowing in the emptiness, I focused on what came next. Chloe and Eric thought they could just move on without consequences. That wasn't going to happen. I couldn't let them walk away unscathed after what they had done. The first step was simple. I drafted an email to Eric's wife, Michelle. It was brief, but clear. I attached screenshots of the messages and photos along with a note. "I thought you deserved to know the truth about your husband. If you want to talk, let me know." I hesitated before hitting send, wondering if I was crossing a line. But then I remembered Chloe laughing in that café, dismissing me as insignificant. I clicked send, and felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The next morning, I got a reply. Michelle wanted to meet. She suggested a quiet cafe away from her neighborhood, and I agreed. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting in a corner with a tense expression. Michelle was elegant, the kind of woman who carried herself with dignity even in the face of disaster. "David?" she asked as I approached. I nodded and sat down across from her. "Michelle, thank you for meeting me." She didn't waste time. "Is this true? All of it?" "Yes," I said, handing her the photos and printouts of the messages. "I'm sorry I have to be the one to tell you this, but your husband, Eric, and my wife, Chloe, have been having an affair for almost a year." She looked at the evidence, her hands trembling slightly. "I had my suspicions," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But I never thought it was this bad." We talked for almost an hour, piecing together the timeline and filling in the gaps. By the end of the conversation, Michelle was determined to confront Eric, and I couldn't blame her. As we were saying goodbye, she turned to me and said, "You and I have been underestimated, David. Let's show them they were wrong." Her words stuck with me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt I wasn't alone. But the real confrontation was still ahead, and I knew it wouldn't be as peaceful as this meeting. The day Michelle confronted Eric is one I'll never forget. She texted me in the morning, "Doing it today. Be ready for anything." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I didn't have to wait long. By noon, my phone was blowing up with messages, one from Chloe and two from an unknown number. Chloe's message was short and sharp. "What the hell did you do, David?" The unknown number turned out to be Eric. His messages were full of rage and barely coherent. "You're a coward, David, dragging Michelle into this? What's wrong with you? Stay out of my life or you'll regret it." I almost laughed at the irony of his threat. "Stay out of my life? You were in mine for a year." Michelle had clearly not held back. Later that evening, she called me and recounted everything. She had shown Eric the evidence, and, as expected, he denied it at first. But when she showed him the photos and messages, his excuses fell apart. "He tried to blame me," Michelle said over the phone, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and triumph. "Said it was my fault because I wasn't there for him. Can you believe it?" "I can," I replied bitterly. "Chloe used the same excuse. What are you going to do now?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm not going to let this go." That night, Chloe showed up at my house unannounced. She looked disheveled, not her usual put-together self. "You ruined everything," she said, walking in. "Ruined what, Chloe?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Your perfect affair? Your chance to live a double life while I stayed in the dark?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "You had no right to drag Eric's family into this. This was between us." "Between us?" I shot back. "You made it everyone's business the moment you started sneaking around with him. Don't stand there and play the victim, Chloe." She opened her mouth to retort, but seemed at a loss for words. For the first time, she looked defeated. "What do you want, Chloe?" I finally asked, my voice quieter but no less firm. "I don't know," she said, and her voice trembled. I didn't think it would go this far." I shook my head, feeling a pang of pity that I quickly pushed away. "It's too late for regrets. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences." She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. The consequences were only just beginning. The days after Chloe's visit were anything but quiet. My phone wouldn't stop. Messages from mutual friends, family members, and even a few of Chloe's co-workers who had somehow heard about the situation. The news spread fast, and soon people were taking sides. Chloe, unsurprisingly, played the victim. She told anyone who would listen that I had overreacted, that I was angry and trying to ruin her life. Eric, on the other hand, went silent. I suspected Michelle had him on lockdown at home, but I didn't care. What I didn't expect was how deeply it would affect my own life. Friends I thought were mine started questioning me. Why had I exposed Chloe so publicly? Why had I dragged Eric's family into it? I couldn't believe it. One of our mutual friends, Claire, called me one evening. "David, I just heard everything. Are you okay?" I hesitated. Claire and Chloe had been friends for years, and I wasn't sure if I could trust her, but I decided to be honest. "Honestly? No, Claire, I'm not okay. Chloe cheated on me, lied, and humiliated me, and now I'm becoming the bad guy for exposing it." Claire sighed. "Look, I'm not saying she was right, but maybe you could have handled it differently. People are talking, David. You've made things messy." Her words cut deep, but I forced myself to stay calm. Made things messy, Claire? She betrayed me. What did you want me to do? Sit quietly and let her walk all over me? Claire was silent for a moment before saying, I don't know. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I replied, my voice turning cold. "She made her choice. Now she has to live with the consequences." The conversation ended quickly, leaving me angrier than before. It seemed everyone wanted to avoid the bitter truth, that Chloe and Eric were the villains in this story, not me. But amid all the chaos, there was a moment of clarity. Michelle called again, this time more determined than ever. "David," she said, "I think it's time to take this further." "What do you mean?" I asked, unsure where she was going with this. "I've spoken to a lawyer," she said, "and if you're okay with it, I think we should both file formal complaints against them. Eric's company has a strict policy against workplace affairs. If we push this, he could lose his position, and Chloe could face consequences too." I went quiet, considering her words. It felt like a drastic step, but at the same time, they had crossed every conceivable line. "Let's do it," I said finally. It's time they felt the full weight of what they've done. Hanging up the phone, I realized the road ahead would be difficult. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was starting to regain control of my life. The consequences weren't over. If anything, they were just beginning. A week later, our plan was set in motion. Michelle and I filed formal complaints against Eric and Chloe. Michelle had gathered enough evidence from Eric's phone and work emails to back up our claims, and I provided additional documentation. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about accountability. The consequences were immediate. Eric's company launched an internal investigation, and within a few days, he was suspended. Chloe, whose work often overlapped with Eric's, was also called in for questioning. Their so-called discreet affair turned out to be anything but secret. Rumors spread quickly among their colleagues, and their reputations began to crumble. Chloe called me several times during the investigation, but I didn't answer. She left voicemails filled with a mix of anger, regret, and desperate pleas. "David, you've made your point. Please, stop. We can fix this." But there was nothing left to fix. Michelle and I kept in touch throughout the process. She was a fierce ally, and I admired her strength. For the first time in many weeks, I felt I wasn't fighting this battle alone. By the end of the month, the outcome was clear. Eric was fired for violating company policy, and Chloe's contract with her firm was not renewed. They had both burned bridges they couldn't rebuild. When the dust finally settled, I began to focus on rebuilding my life. The house, once filled with painful memories, started to feel like mine again. I rearranged the furniture, removing every trace of Chloe's presence. It was cathartic, like shedding an old skin. One evening, while unpacking a box of old photos, I came across one from our wedding. Chloe looked radiant, and I remembered how happy I had been in that moment. It was a bittersweet reminder of what I thought we had. I didn't hate her anymore. Not entirely. The anger had subsided, replaced by a quiet acceptance. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. As for Michelle, she became an unexpected friend. We met for coffee occasionally, sharing updates and reflecting on everything that had happened. She was moving forward, too, focusing on her kids and her own sense of closure. One day she said something that stuck with me deeply. "You can't let this define you, David. It's a part of your story, but it's not the whole book." She was right. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.